video.
Yeah, I have
Okay,
to
we're
confirm it as well. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Cool. Okay, good. All right. Hi, Zdenek. How are you?
Hi, Gabriel. I'm fine, thanks.
Awesome. Awesome. Good to have you here. So Zdenek, you're Zdenek, right?
Yep.
And you have you're an English teacher first and foremost, right?
Yeah, we are fellow English teachers. We are colleagues.
English
That's right.
teachers, yeah, we are colleagues. And but you also have loads of other stuff going on, right? You've got a podcast, is that right?
Yep.
Zdenek's English podcast. That's where you can check out. Tell us about your podcast. What do you do on your podcast?
Yeah, it's like a kind of a mixed bag, really. It's a hodgepodge. It's everything. I started it back in 2013. I suppose the idea was to work on my own English. You know, I was an English teacher, a novice English teacher.
Cool.
Freshly graduated from a university, so I thought I might as well work on my own English. And
great idea.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, but so you kind of, the podcast was partly for your own English learning improvement as well as helping other people out.
I think that's fair.
Really
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. So I had always wanted to do something creative anyway. So I was also sort of satiating some kind of inner need of doing something creative, and I suppose it's always nice to have an audience. So it was a natural thing for me to do. And I have to mention here Luke from Luke's English podcast, because he was the one that inspired me to start my own podcast. Yeah. And
Luke's great. Yeah. He's been going on forever as well. That guy, 2013 or something. I think he started.
Exactly. I don't know. I think it's longer than that, actually. 2008 or something. 2009. Wow. I don't know 100%.
The birth of
since when, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Go on. So Luke inspired you to start a podcast.
Yeah.
You do a lot of football stuff, right? You're really into football.
Now I do. Yeah. I think that was sort of idea that I got because of the whole COVID situation. Yeah. So I'd always worked for a school for about 10 years. And then in 2019, I went to London. I worked there for a language school. And then because of COVID, I decided to go back because I knew the schools were about to get closed anyway. So it would be quite tough for me to I could work a little bit like from home, but it wasn't really my home because I had to share a house with a lot of people. So the idea of spending the whole day in one house with a lot of people didn't exactly appeal to me. So I decided to go back to my country, and ever since then I realized that I had to go solo as a teacher. And
also living in London is so expensive. So yes, it's crazy. Cool. So I wanted to ask you about your teaching. Hang on, we should talk about very quickly that your podcast is findable as Zdenek's English podcast, right?
Yeah, Zdenek's English podcast, Zdenek. Someone for people who don't know how to spell my name.
Yeah, and that's everywhere where you find podcasts, right? It's the podcast. It's the podcast world. You're also on Instagram and YouTube, where you put up your podcast episodes, right?
I don't always put up my podcast episodes on my YouTube channel, but sometimes I do. The one we recorded with you, for example, is definitely going to be there.
Yeah. I saw that. That was fun to watch. Relive the memories. Yeah. So on YouTube and on Instagram, you're Teacher Zdenek, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Cool. So I recommend anyone just go out and check out Zdenek's English podcast or Teacher Zdenek on YouTube or Instagram. There we go. Good plugging. That was good plugging. Quality plugging.
Thanks for that.
No, I love a good plug. It's fun. It's good fun. And it's good. We're sharing the love. There's so much great stuff out there, and this is some of it. So that's good. It's good to let people know about that. I wanted to ask you, because you were going in that direction, so this is good. This is actually relating to my first question. Like, what's your teaching context now? Like, who do you teach? Are you teaching online? Are you teaching in the real world? Are you teaching face-to-face, one-to-ones, business, kids? Who do you teach? What do you do?
Yeah, so as I said, after coming back here to the Czech Republic, I started thinking of going solo, of going independent. And well, if you have never done it, it's not as easy as it looks.
You're talking freelancing, right?
Yeah, freelancing, because it's a completely different world. So it doesn't really matter how many qualifications you have, or how much experience you have teaching, or how many students you have taught, or in how many countries you have taught, because this is a completely different world, and different rules apply. Yeah. So what I discovered is that you kind of need to have a niche. Yeah, some sort of unique specialization. And at first I thought I would do board games, English through board games. So you can see behind me, there are a lot of games, and
that's a nice idea.
It's a nice idea, but that's where it kind of ends. Yeah. I've always used board games in my classes. Yeah, in my group classes.
Right.
In face-to-face classes, but it doesn't really work that well online, because once you go independent, you have to start small, and you first have to teach one-to-ones.
Okay.
And even though I have created a unique course, it's difficult to find enough students of similar level that would enroll and take the course, because as I said, you have to start small. You have got one-to-one students. So at the moment, that's most of my students.
Yeah.
I do have another course called English Through Role Plays, which is less niche. Yeah? So it's kind of for anyone who is at B2 and C1 level. And then, as you mentioned, I also started dabbling into teaching English through football. So
yeah,
bought this interesting book, for instance. Yeah,
football English.
Yeah.
Well, that looks fun. I probably need that too, because I don't know anything about football. When people start talking about football, I'm just out. I can't join the conversation at all. So that might be useful for me. Yeah.
Yes. So, but again, it's a bit tough, because I do have two to three students with whom I only talk about football during our lessons. Yeah. So it's, again, for me, it's some sort of a transition that I would like to make in the future. But right now it's a bit unrealistic. So I do work with a lot of general English students, mostly high-level students, advanced students. I do have one student who decided to choose me to prepare her for the CPE exam. Which is always it's tough. It's always a great challenge.
Yeah,
but I've done it before, so I know I can do it. And occasionally I prepare someone for the IELTS exam too. And but most of my students is general English, different needs. You know it yourself how it is. I've got a student who has fantastic English, but her pronunciation, needs to be a little bit improved, and that's what we are working on.
Yeah. I mean, every student has different needs,
exactly,
more or less. So your teaching is the same as me, I think, just like one-to-one online. Is it 100%
like this?
Yeah, like this, 100% online, right?
95% online.
That's so traditional. Sure. You have a real world student. That's so 20th century. Wow, cool. Okay, so do you travel to their office or something to teach them, or?
No, there's just one 95% of time I teach online, if I did make myself clear. And then there's one student, she's a doctor, and she it's basically, my village is on her way from work, so she just stops by, and we have an English lesson. So she's the only one
on a physical table.
Yeah, and it's really weird, Gabriel. I can't tell you how much I miss actually teaching people face to face.
Yeah. So do you prefer it? Do you prefer? Because I can't remember what it was like. I've been teaching online since like 2015 or something. Do you prefer teaching face to face?
I don't know, because now that I'm teaching online, I can also see the benefits of doing that. But I have to say, I do miss it. I do miss that feeling of being able to walk through the desks and interacting with the students face to face, and managing like the class, managing, using my body language to
a classroom with students, plural.
I do miss it. I do.
I kind of miss that too.
It's different. It's different than this.
I miss those moments, when you could just say, okay, now you guys talk to each other. And you just don't have to do much. You just go around monitoring the students and just watching everyone. And they're all you're in a room full of people who are just chatting away. And it feels good. It's a nice vibe when you've just got these little groups of people and they're all talking because of you. And it feels good. It feels good.
Exactly.
I do miss that.
I think like I'm able to give the students more autonomy when I do that. While with the one-to-ones, inevitably there's going to be a lot of teacher talking time.
Yes, of course.
No matter what I do, like I try to get my students involved as much as I can. Try to elicit the answers, everything I should do as an English teacher, but it's just different. Maybe I don't have so much experience with it, I don't know, but
I think that you raised a really important point, which I haven't actually properly thought about before, that group classes tend to promote autonomy more than one-to-one, which is you get the sort of slightly dependent relationship on the teacher, which is weird because you might think it's the other way around if you think about it without thinking about it too much, because people who take one-to-one lessons, one, right, autonomous, but no, because they're not out on their own in the classroom, like in small groups with other students or anything like that they may be quite dependent on the teacher. That's true.
I don't know, I'm sure there are a lot of ways to do this. There are even books you can study.
Probably studies done about this as well. There's so much to learn and so little time to learn it all.
Absolutely. I do have experience with teaching groups as well, teaching groups online.
Which online. Which is
little, because like I said, I have got this course called English Through Role Plays.
Yes.
I don't always run it, but at the moment there's one course happening, and that's a little bit better because I use I don't know if you're familiar with Discord.
Of course, it's a sort of like a forum chat sort of platform, right?
Well, it's a cool platform because it's kind of like breakout rooms in Zoom, but it's also, as you said, it gives you the idea of some sort of enclosed group, like group that no one can join, only if you are invited. So it's like a unique place where students can improve their English and feel good about it and not feel threatened, so Fantastic. And I have the possibility to divide, as a teacher, students into pairs and groups, as you would do here on Zoom.
So is it more challenging working in groups online than anything else? Because I'm imagining out of like one-to-one versus groups versus online versus offline, that particular combination is probably the most challenging, like groups online. Do
you know what? It's funny. It's funny you should ask, because I'm actually doing my module 3 Delta on online teaching.
I wanted to talk about that in a minute, but okay, go ahead.
On online teaching, and in part 1 of this paper, you are asked to sort of address some common issues in online teaching, and one of the things you should do is to compare. So from my research, I found out that for example, when it comes to monitoring the students, it's on the one hand, it's easier to monitor pairs, because there's no background noise. You're just focusing on that pair. That's easier online. But on the other hand, when it comes to overseeing the class, the entire class, it's actually harder because you can't see what's happening everywhere else. You can't hear what's happening, so you have to sort of
so do you mean like because in the real world you're like watching, you're maybe hovering next to a group of of three, maybe three students talking, but you're still keeping an ear open for stuff peripherally just to see if you could pick up anything going on with the other students. You can't do that online.
Maybe you can, but I haven't figured it out
yet.
Right,
yeah. But this is most platforms, the default is that you're in the breakout room or you're not in the breakout room, right? So you can't have the volume low on peripheral settings, so to speak.
Exactly.
I can imagine that must be quite tough. I guess this does raise the question. I don't know if you know the answer, because I don't really have an answer for this, but do you think, as COVID winds down, as the whole COVID pandemic stuff is winding down, do you think we will get back to like lots of like in-person teaching, or do you think like this switch to online is going to be more permanent and pervasive?
That's a very good question. I think a lot of people who have been sort of unsure about this have now changed their mind. I'm pretty sure they have realized that it can be quite convenient to take the lesson from the comfort of your own home without having to care about what you wear. You might be eating on the side, drinking, it's so easy. There's no commuting. It might be cheaper for some people as well.
You can bring your cat.
I can't tell you how many times I've done it, and it's not even my cat. It's my. I just air my room, and my neighbor's cat jumps in, and then it's often something I talk about with my students.
That's good. It comes up naturally in the conversation. Why is your neighbor's cat here? Yeah.
They think it's my cat, of course, and I have and then there's a whole story of me having to explain why my neighbor's cat sort of cheats on my neighbor.
Maybe you got better food. That might be it.
I don't think that's it. I think I'm just available,
You're just there. Yeah, cats are pretty they know what they want all the time. Okay, cool. Exactly. So I wanted to ask you about the Delta, because this was actually my next question. So you're, as you said, doing module 3 of the Delta. So you survived module 2, which is the one where everyone goes crazy. So well done. Like, how's the Delta going? Like, I haven't done a Delta. I did the TESOL Masters, but I didn't do the Delta. One of the reasons I didn't take the Delta was because it just looks like a nightmare. It looks so difficult. How's your experience been with it?
Just to explain the context a little bit. So when I started my Delta, I had already had a master's degree. So I had already been well qualified to teach, but as a non-native English teacher, it's actually you need it. You need CELTA, you need a CELTA, you need a Delta to stand any chance on the market as a teacher, because I like to teach international students, you see. It's just much more interesting for me than teaching my, let's say, countrymen. I hope they are not listening now, because I do have some students.
But I mean, I guess what you're getting at is the diversity is what
that
makes
are
it,
Czech, but absolutely, And I like to help my students make friends as well. That's where the Discord group comes in.
Cool. So international community stuff.
I love that.
So this is an interesting point. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
No. Go on.
No. I'm sure you're about to make the same point I was about to make. But
I don't think so. I was about to speak about the Delta. I was about to address the original question you asked me.
Okay. I was going to say, like, it was quite interesting. I wanted to talk about native speakerism today, and we will. But one of the reasons you took the Delta, despite not necessarily having to take the Delta, is basically because of discrimination against so-called non-native English speaking teachers. Right. That's interesting. So this was this your main motivation for taking the Delta, to get past that hurdle, or at least
do you know what? at the time, I didn't actually feel the discrimination that much. I didn't actually realize it. But it's stronger now that I am. I didn't even feel it when I was in the UK, to be honest with you. I was treated
I
fairly.
think the UK is actually quite good at this sort of thing.
I loved it. I loved it there.
They're quite aware of the problems. Yeah.
And I was given the chance, and I think I managed to prove myself. And there were no problems with me whatsoever. No one ever fired me. No one ever complained about me. Students didn't ask for a native English teacher to replace me or anything like that. But when I came back home and became a freelancer, that's when I started realizing that there is a real problem there, because you have to basically start with all the marketing, and you have to start attracting the students and doing things online. And I noticed that it seems to be a bit harder for someone like me to do this. It's not impossible, don't get me wrong. Sometimes I use it as an excuse. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, sure. But it's definitely an issue, right?
It is an issue, because of the stereotype, basically, that it's.
How did you notice? Sorry. Go ahead. What's the stereotype?
Well, students, they just think that native teachers are better in general. They just feel like they're better. They can teach them better. They can help them with because of the way they speak, because of the accent. That's the common idea, that because my accent is not a native speaker accent, let's say.
Yeah, of course.
And as a result of that, the student will, for some reason, suffer and will not pick up the accent of the native
they won't have a native accent. But the thing is, I mean, already I'm getting triggered because, like, if a native, I'm not big on these terms, native, non-native speaker. Let's say if a first language English speaker taught a class of people from, let's say, Prague, they won't get an English accent either. No. It's not something that really is taught, and it's not something that really matters. Like, who cares what accent you have? Seriously, is that really a priority? Like, are you going to be a spy? Like, why do you need an English accent? But even spies these days, they don't even bother with the accent stuff. They're just online all the time. Like, you don't like, you can't put a spy in the 1950s. It doesn't make any sense. Sorry,
I think a lot of research has been done into this, and honestly, you would have to spend almost every single day with that student. Like, maybe if you have a girlfriend, let's say a native speaker English girlfriend, that might really help you a lot. Yes. Also, it depends on your age, right? There's this critical hypothesis, what's it called?
The critical period hypothesis.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's very young. That's childhood. Well, I mean, below,
most people that I teach are adults, so
they're beyond that period.
Exactly. And there's no shame in having a foreign accent, as we know. So
that's another thing, and this seems to be the crux of the matter. It's like an element of like shame or prestige or like these sorts of things. But then if we start really exploring that avenue, it gets very suspicious, doesn't it? Because why is sounding like you're from Britain better than sounding like you're from the Czech Republic? This is very strange. This is a strange thing to think.
Besides, I would like to think that my accent is British anyway, right? It's just there might be some features of my native accent, but more or less, the way I pronounce the words, I don't say words. It's not American, right?
Well,
American.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So
yes, but I mean, I personally, I really like your accent because it's a kind of interesting hodgepodge, to use an awesome phrase that you used earlier. It's like kind of a hodgepodge of your background and your experience, where you're from, but also your experience working and living in England, because there are elements of sort of British, like London English in there. And I like it because it's kind of it's yours. And yes, and yes, and I think that's great. And I think anyone who's learning English should not strive necessarily to sound British, but to sound like who they are. I know this sounds very obvious.
The problem, Gabriel, is that that's not so easy to sell to people, you see?
Right.
So when I do my marketing or something like that, I can't say, speak English like a non-native speaker, or or let's learn English as a lingua franca.
Or like perfect Czech English. Yes.
So
yeah, how do you spin it? Because I mean, we know from the research, we know from the studies that like non-native English teachers are just as competent as native teachers, and maybe even better in many ways. We can talk about the advantages and disadvantages in a minute. So how do you convey this information to
be honest, I have to explain to my followers that this is not something that matters that much. Sometimes I avoid it as well, but I also, just showing that I'm a confident English speaker myself, and by recording my videos and my podcasts, I just want to give the impression that I'm not ashamed of my accent. And, what matters really is that I can help my students take their English to another level. Yeah, that's what it should come down to ultimately, right?
Yeah.
And so I can meet all the needs and all that. So
so you have to keep kind of just restating this whenever you're sort of publicly like publishing something. I see. It must be, it's a pain, isn't it? Like having this extra thing to have to deal with. That
it's also a trap,
I don't have to
Gabriel. It's also a trap, because if you do it too much, I'm going to use your word.
Okay.
You might get triggered yourself, or maybe that's not the right word. You might get you will be focusing on the wrong thing. So I want to focus on helping my students and not on my own imposter syndrome issues or whatever we might call it.
Very cool.
You know what I mean? Like the more I bring attention to it, the more it might start doing me disservice. So you know what I mean?
I guess that's a good point, because it's distracting people from your real, the things you have to offer.
And it's distracting me as well.
Yeah. Okay, well, in the spirit of that notion, let's go back to the Delta. I was going to ask you, you're taking the Delta, you're on unit 3. Is it unit or module?
Module
3, sorry. So you're almost done. And
to be honest with you, when did I do module? I started with module 2, which is arguably the toughest part, or the part that requires the most work.
I have a friend who's doing module 2. They, for a period of time, are no longer my friend, because they become horrible people while they're doing module 2. They become super unpleasant, and it's just that no one wants to be friends with them until they finish that bloody module.
I can confirm that. Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. So you survived. You survived module 2.
I passed it. No problems there, even though there were people who failed there. So it was tough. And after that, I did module 2 is the teaching, the practical element of the course of the certificate. And then after that, I took the exam, which is more theoretical. That was easy for me, I would say. So I got a merit in that as well. And then I put Delta on hold. I took a break because to be honest, I'm not really into writing much. So writing a long assignment, which is module 3. It's the wrong word to say it scared me, because I have already done the master's thesis, but maybe because of having that experience, I kept putting it off. So I think now I finally got round to doing module 3, but who knows what's going to happen with that.
So you still got to finish it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's great. And I can't remember what I was going to say, but one thing I was going to say was, so great, you've almost got through the whole Delta. And what advice, I wanted to ask, what advice do you have for people who are starting or thinking of doing the Delta? Is there anything that you wish you had known when you started the Delta? yeah, for anyone out there who wants to take a Delta or is thinking of, improving their, like going up in their careers as English teachers and getting this certificate, what advice would you have for them?
I'm just trying to think like how it's different from doing a university degree. I suppose it's very intense, and you have to be ready to just, especially when talking about module 2, you have to be ready to focus only on that, like to have no other commitments. It really depends how you do it, because there is also, I think, this distance delta when you can kind of stretch it. But if you take the intensive course, then you just have to do that, nothing else.
One piece of advice is certainly just make sure you have the space and time to commit to that second module.
Yeah, it has to be 100% commitment. And
cancel everything.
What else? What else is there? I'd say it's a very, how to put it? You have to tick all the boxes. It's very, what's the word for it? Like structured.
Yes. It's box ticking, I think, is a good metaphor. I mean, again, I haven't taken it, but I've talked to plenty of people who have, and they're very, very strict and very rigid with all these.
Do you know what?
Box ticking things.
Yeah, because as an English teacher, I tend to be quite creative, and I like to be spontaneous, and it's part of my style, let's say. Yeah. Because I like the Dogme method, for example.
Yes, I wanted to talk methodology as well today. Dogme, very spontaneous.
Exactly, and I like to create my own stuff, and I've done some of that during my teaching practices, and I'm not sure it was as appreciated as I was hoping, hoping for. Like,
all right.
So I spent a lot of time on preparing my own lessons, and I didn't really use course book much. The course book, which is something you can totally do during the Delta. And I think it's, now looking back at it, like with the benefit of the hindsight, I think I should have done that more. Maybe I would have made things easier for myself. Yeah. So
are you saying that like doing things a bit more by the book would have been better rather than being creative with it?
Exactly. Yeah. Because when you're creative, like I love it, but it naturally is a little bit energy draining, or I don't know, maybe that's the wrong word, but that's the thing. Like I can get bored if I have to just be in that stereotype, and if teaching becomes too much of a routine for me as a teacher, I get bored. So I want to prevent the burnout. So that's why this is something you have to do. You have to tick all the boxes, as we said, and it's not. And
I guess if you're doing something like Dogme, which is a very spontaneous teaching approach, during something like the Delta, which is a very rigid, marked, they're marking you, they're assessing you, it's a big assessment. It's very difficult from their point of view to assess something that doesn't have so much structure, because they can't see how much of this you were planning before. They can't see whether you have any teaching principles in mind. It's very difficult to prove that, because everything that happens you only know about after it happens. So then you could retrospectively claim to be doing, oh yeah, I did this because of this method, which you may not have really been doing. So I understand from Cambridge's point of view why things like Dogme, I guess, because you said you felt it wasn't strongly appreciated when you introduced it.
I don't think I did too much Dogme at the time. I'm speaking about now. Let's say that the thing is, like there is one class which is called experimental practice, and that's when you are supposed to try something new out, and that's when most people actually try Dogme out.
Is Dogme a popular choice for that module?
Yes, it is. And they even, I think they even do one input session about it, and they always talk about it there.
Okay.
But I don't think they recommend it for the actual assessed teaching practices, and especially the last assessed teaching practice is externally assessed. So there's someone that comes, often it's some sort of big name of ELT as well.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so you get to meet a celebrity while you're being assessed.
Yeah. I can't remember. Is it Jonathan? Oh my God, I forgot the name that I had, but it was somebody that even the tutors and they looked up to, and you can feel it from them.
I'm going to run to Facebook very quickly and check my Jonathans.
Jonathan.
Because I think I met somebody. It doesn't matter. Anyway, did he work for Oxford? I know he was working for Cambridge in this case, but was he in Oxford?
I'm sorry, I really can't remember who it was, but Jonathan Marks.
Hold on, I'm gonna check.
Something like that. Jonathan Marks could be.
Okay, it doesn't matter. Yeah, I can't find.
I think I found him. I think his name is Jonathan Marks.
Okay.
And he's a teacher, trainer, translator, and author. I think that's his name, Jonathan Marks. Yeah.
Okay.
So he was. Yeah. I think so. So that's a person who has written books. A teacher, trainer. So, yeah.
Yeah, and yes. So I guess in terms of advice, bringing this back to the advice for the Delta, like try not to be too experimental on the whole, right? Because it's safer to go by the book, even if it's something that you may not be desiring so much. You
can do that later, of course, in your during your teaching career,
but, when you're free. Yeah. Okay, that's good. Play it safe. It's not bad advice. What about one more piece of advice? What would you give to people who are planning to do the Delta? So we've got two things already. We've got make sure you have enough space for module 2. We have don't experiment too much. Play it safe because it's just easier. Okay, and
I've got it. Be prepared to fail because
I like it.
To be honest, I can't remember ever failing a single exam at university. I just don't know. I was a good student, or I studied hard. I don't know why, but it didn't happen to me. But I did fail one of my teaching practices at the Delta course. And you have no idea. I guess it's an ego thing or something, but I couldn't take it. It was so hard for me to take it. Wow. Yeah, and I was not the only one as well. There was one Irish guy with 2 university degrees. And when the tutors failed his class, he couldn't take it. Yeah, and it happened to me too. I don't know what it is. I guess it's your personality. You are under a lot of pressure there. Yeah, you're under a lot of pressure there, and believe in your own abilities, especially if you are experienced teacher like I was already. I had the qualifications, and then something happened. So, for example, I chose a topic that was not the best idea. So I went for something to do with politics. It was like news, TV news, but there were some political. There were some political pieces of news. I think I took it. Was it TV news, radio news, something like that? And then I prepared a listening. It was a listening lesson. Yeah, I prepared a listening from BBC or something like that. But it didn't really. The students weren't really into it that much, which is.
Yes, I guess that's always a tricky thing, isn't it? Getting something that's going to engage students, because I think student engagement is almost like the number one priority. No, I can see what happened there.
So this is what happened, and then it went from bad to worse.
It wasn't the end of the world, right? In retrospect,
no, because you are allowed to fail. I think up to two classes, as long as they are, one of them is a skills class, and then the other one functions class, something like that. I'm not sure 100%.
Yeah. But you could afford the loss here.
I could, But under no circumstances can you afford to fail the externally assessed class, which is the last one. It's like the most important one.
Can you resit it if you fail? Is it
you
possible?
Can, yeah, but it's so much hassle. And can you imagine, like you spend 2 months of your life only doing that? Yeah. You go, you attend all the input sessions. You write a lot of essays. Make so many lesson plans, which you would never ever have to do again in that kind of way in your career. And then you have 45 minutes to show what you've got, and then it doesn't go according to plan. And
this is why I didn't take the Delta. It's just like
it's a nightmare.
So much stuff like this. But on the plus side, it does look to me that the Delta, more than because I've got the MA TESOL, right? You know, this is the other big teachery thing that people get. But it does seem to me that if you want to take something that improves your actual teaching, Delta is the one, because it forces you to think about what you're doing all the time. To an almost like sadistic level, I think, because it looks like complete hell.
It's not all bad.
Okay.
It's not all bad.
Okay,
you're asking me about some pieces of advice. I'm just sort of taking that approach of
I'm not just drawing from your stories, but you know, just my general experience of anyone else who's taken the Delta. It's a lot of pressure. It is hard work.
But then when you go through all this and you pull through and pass it, it's an amazing feeling, of course, because
you're a better teacher afterwards.
Yeah, you're a better teacher, and it's a nice string to your bow as well. Yes, it's a nice thing to have on your CV, and your chances of getting hired are bigger, and you might even apply for the director of studies job,
or you can get director of studies jobs,
a more prestigious jobs in general. So,
and I think if you completed the Delta, correct me if I'm wrong, but in some if you want to take a master's, you will have already ticked off a lot of the modules that you need to take for the master's. By doing the Delta. I know that they've been looking into that. I haven't checked if that's the case, but I think they were trying to bridge that a few years ago, and I don't know how that went. But
I don't know, Gabriel. I don't know, because that was not that was not my route, so I don't know.
Okay, in that case, I'm not saying that because I don't know for sure. So not going to give like unreliable advice online. But no, Delta very worth having, and it sounds like it might even be worth doing. I'm joking, of course, it is worth it. Cool. And I wanted also to talk about methods today, because you're a teaching geek, I'm a teaching geek. I got a feeling, I was going to ask you about, your favorite methods, but I got a feeling they're going to be the same as mine. So let's try this out. You know what? I'm going to write 2 things on a piece of paper right now. You don't have to do it. I'm just going to do it just to... All right, now tell me, what are your top 2 favorite teaching approaches or methods or whatever?
So, well, like most people, I use the communicative method. I really like the fact that it's very interactive, and you put students in pairs and groups and everybody gets involved. I think that's the right approach.
CLT, would you define it simply as communicative language teaching, or are you being more broad with your definition?
I'm not doing module 1 anymore. Gabriel, I may have forgotten all these abbreviations.
Okay,
it's communicative methods, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's no real like solid thing here. There's nothing to get wrong or to get right. It's just a way of like perceiving it. Like when you say communicative methods, are you thinking very, very broadly? You're not looking at anything very prescriptive. You're just thinking like the general approach of using communication as a way to help learning.
Well, it has got some rules, I suppose. It's about that teacher talking time should be reduced. It should be learner-centered, and what else is there? It's not very far from the task-based approach as well, is it? You see, I have forgotten all the ins and outs.
It doesn't matter because what you describe doing as effective learning can or may not fall into categories that exist. It doesn't matter. A good teacher is a good teacher. But okay,
but
yes.
I'm also a big fan of the Krashen's theory of the language acquisition. So
talk us through Krashen. Can you the basics, the very basics.
Again, I don't know if I remember everything, but the I+1, yeah. So
what's I+1?
I think that means that when you talk to your students, you should your English should be at one level above your students' level. So in some cases, when you're working with beginners or lower level students, you have to grade down your language, a bit. Whereas when you're working with higher level students, you just use your best English. In my case, I do what I can. That's one of them. Then there is this. I think it's Krashen's theory. I think it's like several hypotheses, isn't it?
Yeah, I think he's got some. Yeah. 5?
And
is it 5?
Something like that. Yeah. And then there's one about having some sort of appropriate environment for learning, like feeling no pressure, not having any anxiety. I can't remember what it is.
This is called the affective filter.
The affective filter. Yeah, that's it.
This, I love this one a lot because it makes so much sense. I mean, it sounds all scientific and academic, the affective filter, but like essentially it's like make sure your students aren't stressed out.
Absolutely. That's why I have used so many games. I think I always justified it with that because it's brilliant. The students forget that they are learning. They're just so involved, so engaged, and it's amazing. Yeah. So
go on.
Yeah, I think it's also to do with the natural. It's like the natural approach, isn't it? So I don't like translation so much. In fact, ironically, I think it's back. It's back. Yeah, it's coming back.
It seems to be more prevalent than it was. Yeah.
They even told us at the Delta course that it's not as frowned upon as it used to be.
It used to be a big no-no. Yeah, when I was.
But for me, it's still a no-no. I don't like it at all.
Okay.
I don't like it at all.
Okay, this is interesting because I think there's this. Just looking at, I read sort of the academic paper. Oh no, I don't read all of them. I have a quick look, and there seems to be a new term that seems to be coming out in the sort of academic world of language teaching, and that's translanguaging. Yeah, it's a very like new academic term, and it's about the way that we can sort of switch and the way that we can use common second or third or fourth languages between each other to make the sort of communication more effective. I think that's it. So let's say, you know a bit of Turkish and I know a bit of Czech, and we also both know a bit of English. Well, in both of our cases, a lot of English. And let's say that there's one thing we're talking about and you want to express something, and it's just easier to say it in Turkish, so you just say it in Turkish. You just go for the Turkish word because I know what it is and you know what it is. Or like, we're talking about something, I want to express something and there's a Czech phrase that really captures it, or a Czech idiom or something, and I'll just throw in the Czech idiom because it's making language more effective. And I think this sort of translanguaging is being examined a lot in language teaching because it seems, I think the idea is that this may be aiding learning and helping learning the target language. I don't know the details. This is an impression I've been getting. Do you ever find that sort of thing happening that could be useful? Or
I would be a hypocrite if I said it never happened to me, but I try to avoid it as much as I can. And even if I have a Czech student, I don't tend to use Czech language. Yeah. And it's the kind of strategy I try to teach my students to adopt as well. And it's also about my own preferences. Like, we as teachers, we all have preferences who we like to teach. And I think this sort of thing would mostly work for beginners or lower levels. Those students that struggle to find the right words to express themselves. And I don't normally work with such students. I tend to work with intermediate, upper intermediate, and especially advanced students. And I even have some proficiency students. So I don't know. I feel like there's I draw from my own experience as well. You see, as a learner of English, and I think it had never done me any good. Like even using the, let's say, what's the opposite of monolingual dictionary? The bilingual dictionary.
Bilingual dictionary. Yeah.
It just never did me any good. Like if you use a monolingual dictionary. And if you use a good one, let's say the Cambridge Dictionary or the Oxford Dictionary or Longman or something like that, they always use the most common word to define whatever word you're looking for. So you can easily, like, once you get the hang of it, it's such a powerful tool to use.
And you become more and more familiar with the most common words, which is always important.
And you have more exposure to the language. And the problem is that some teachers, who non-native teachers who teach English to their countrymen, they fall into this trap. And it's not just the teachers, but then the students, they take advantage of it. They know they can use that mother tongue, and it's a trap. And it's a trap for teachers too, because then you sort of become not lazy, but you sort of give in to that, and that's not the approach I would like to take. I like to challenge myself as a teacher too, and that's why I love this job, because I feel like I can improve myself, like every single day when I'm checking something I'm not sure about, let's say, it feels like I'm learning too. And by translating it, it's just a short, like using the translation method. It's just a shortcut, and it's not. It might help. It's like putting out fire. Yeah, it's like putting out a fire. You just, it's a temporary fix, but in a long term, it's if that's what you do all the time with your students, how are they going to benefit from that long term?
Well, certainly, from one point of view, and I know exactly what you mean, because I've had this when it gets when the whole thing gets out of control, when I was living in Turkey, I spoke Turkish. I was using my Turkish a lot for a while to help get things across to students, but in the end, we all just ended up spending the class speaking Turkish. And it ended up being a Turkish lesson for me rather than an English lesson for them. So you're right. It can slip out of control a lot. Yeah. And I think you're right on the whole. Maybe it's best to go do things from English to English if that's the language you're teaching. I think on occasion there may be it may be warranted, because some things are, it's just quicker and there are things to focus on. And if there's someone who doesn't just understand something, you could just fill them in quickly, because I've seen very inefficient situations, and I've been in very inefficient situations where you're spending 5 minutes trying to describe the nuance of the word goblet or something, when really all you can do is just quickly translate it, because that's not what the lesson's about. The lesson's about something completely different, and you just end up spending a lot of time on something that's so unnecessary. So sometimes it can just help things go along quicker. I think it can be useful in that sort of respect.
You see, I don't have a problem with that. I like all these situations, because that's why I like the Dogme method. Right. Because it's just, I feel like this is sometimes the natural way to use the language. Yeah. Rather than just following the book and trying to fill in all the gaps. And
so you
know what I mean?
The red herring can be the valuable thing itself.
Yeah, because you're trying,
can become the focus.
Yeah, because you gave the example with the word goblet. So you're defining it to your student. You are looking, so your student gets a lot of listening practice. They might start asking you questions. There's the information gap, right? And you're trying to work it out together. And so I don't have a problem with that happening.
Negotiating meaning with each other. Yeah,
exactly.
Maybe,
but
right.
I also understand where you're coming from. Like if there's a curriculum you have to follow or something.
Well, you're right. Yeah. I mean, what is the aim? Is the aim to engage in language, or is the aim to finish the book? I mean, obviously it's to engage in language as much as possible. So this is a way of doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I like it.
I don't have a problem with it. And besides, if you are an experienced teacher, which of course you are, and there are a lot of other experienced teachers out there, then you should know how to do this. You should know how to elicit. You should be able to, simplify your words, to reword it, whatever you're saying, and use visuals or whatever, And come on, we live in the age of technology. So when it comes to teaching online, that's so easy. You just send a picture or Google something, or it's so easy, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's true.
And that's fine. Like when you do that, that's fine. And that's, for me, that's not an issue. Like, but when you translate it, I just, I'm quite stubborn when it comes to this.
Yeah. People feel very strongly about this issue, which is good. It's a good thing to feel strongly about. Yeah, I think I'm still on the fence, but your points are completely valid. I'm not taking that away, but I still think there may be times for it. But going back a bit, so we were talking about like your favorite methods, and you mentioned so communicative language teaching and Krashen's sort of approach. Yeah, you also mentioned Dogme, which is, I wrote down two things for my favorites, and Dogme was one of them, for sure. It's heavily influenced my teaching since I discovered it, and it's still a very dominant part of my teaching approach. Can you, for anyone who doesn't know what Dogme is, can you quickly describe what Dogme? It's not a method; it's an approach. Apparently,
okay.
So it's
sometimes I struggle with what the difference is between a method and
I think a method is very
approach.
Method's more specific, isn't it? A method is like, you must do this and you must do this. Here are the it's rule based. An approach is more like the spirit of something. Yeah,
I see what you mean.
I think that's how I understand it. But but what's Dogme? How do you understand it?
So you don't have a lesson plan at all. So you attend the class and there's no lesson plan. You just come with all your knowledge or your experiences. So does the student. And then you sort of start teaching by asking, hi guys, how are you? What have you been up to? What did you do yesterday? Whatever. Or you see someone is wearing an interesting t-shirt. You start talking about that. It doesn't really matter. Yeah. Anything that's been going on lately in the world. And then it's sort of a natural conversation. And then you work with that. There is what's important is the emerging language. So
emerging language. I love this phrase. Go on.
So students, they have their own resources to use the language, and you sort of put it on board, or you expand on that emerging language. And of course, if you're teaching a group, then the students can learn from each other. And then you try to identify some gaps in your students' knowledge. And that can be challenging for inexperienced teachers, absolutely can. You to be honest, I think you have to know what you're doing. You have to know the theory and everything.
Is it?
No, it's not.
Yeah, I remember when I was doing my master stuff. I read a really good quote. I wish I could remember who it was by. Talking about course book, because obviously Dogme is kind of opposite to the course book, because you are abandoning the course book essentially by adopting a Dogme approach. And someone was describing the course book as either a life vest or a straitjacket, depending on how experienced you are. If you're a new teacher, if you just come off, if you're fresh off the CELTA, you were like this, I was like this, I'm sure you were like this. Like you needed the course book, because otherwise you had no idea what the hell you were doing. And it was totally everything. You depended so heavily on the course book. But you know, as time goes on and you become more experimental and you become more you have more creative in your own like teaching, it becomes more and more of a burden and more of a constriction, and becomes like a straitjacket. So I think Dogme is like, to use a dramatic image, is like bursting out of the straitjacket and into this sort of like unstructured sort of environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think novice teachers shouldn't really do it. You know, I think there's a trap that certain teachers, maybe one of those that like to travel a lot, they just teach in a conversational way and they justify it by dogma. But once the students start asking them questions, or once they are in a position to explain something or to clarify something, then they have no idea what to say and how to explain the rules and grammar and
you raise a really good point. Yeah, so Dogme, it may look like there's a lazy way through something, but you can't do it unless you have the knowledge, which comes from years of teaching experience and understanding how to, not just how the language works and so on, but how you can explain it to people.
Exactly, because for instance, so I teach my students. I use the Dogme method. By the way, I sometimes do live English lessons on my YouTube channel where I do it in this way. It's
cool,
worth checking out.
If you want to see a live Dogme lesson, go and check out teachers.
I'm not sure
at YouTube.
I'm not sure I'm exactly following the you know the hard line. What's the word for it? The Dogme method as it was created by the Scott Thornbury. You know, I might have adopted it.
Yes,
I might have adopted it to my own.
But I think that's a good thing about Dogme, that there's like there's hard Dogme, there's Dogme light, and again, it's an approach, not a method. So I think you're allowed to play with it. And in fact, you know, if you're transitioning from this course book dominated approach to you want to be free of that straitjacket, you can go slowly. You can introduce elements of Dogme into a structured lesson, and you know, it's not pure. It's not pure. It's not like a Suggestopedia or something like that has to be exactly right, and otherwise it's not Suggestopedia. It's flexible. So just to finish my point, so so what I do is that I notice that my student struggles with pronouncing certain sounds, or my students puts the stress on the wrong syllable, and then let's say it's the word communication. My student says communication. So then, of course, my knowledge of phonology will really help me explain this and to show my students that there are actual rules, you know, and that will make a huge difference. Whereas if I just tell my student, hey, this is wrong, you should say it like this, you know, I don't think so you're able to provide them with like the patterns of phonology that help them not just get this word right in the future, but other words too.
Of course, because there's logic to it, like when it comes to
it is English, not always.
It is English, of course. It's full of exceptions.
Yes.
But even you're explaining chunks of language, you know, which is another thing I like a lot.
That's
the lexical approach.
That's the second thing I wrote down on the piece of paper. The lexical approach.
There are still some rules to it, you know. There's still some things you can explain. You can explain what a collocation is or what an idiom is, and
I like where you're going with this, because at the moment it sounds like you're combining a Dogme approach with a lexical teaching approach. So as a final thing, like a final main thing today, let's very quickly, could you describe what is lexical learning? What is lexical teaching?
Okay, so that's the main idea is that people should learn the language in chunks, rather than learning grammatical rules like what's present perfect or first or second conditional or something like that. That's sort of the lexical approach kind of abandons that. And it's more about learning lexical chunks, as I said, like so pieces of language that go together. So collocations are big, idioms, phrasal verbs, or just some useful language for functional language, basically.
Functional language, things to say when you making suggestions, things to say. My favorite thing with lexical learning is pattern grammar. You know, when you have something like, you know, he wants me to open the window, he asked me to open the window, he helped me to open the window. So when you see these sort of structures that don't really fall into a particular tense or anything like that, but they're used again and again and again with different verbs, but the same structures. This sort of thing can seriously unlock a lot of language to language learners once they see. That's my very favorite thing about lexical learning. Like,
so no, so basically that's a brilliant example. So in this case, you wouldn't have to go into explaining the form, having to say that what's this? He asked me to do something. So that's we have
with the verb infinitive.
There's the infinitive with to and all that, and you don't have to go into that. You just show the pattern, and then
when you know one sentence, you know 50 sentences. Another example, I always thought about doing this, and I don't have enough low-level learners to really implement this on a large scale, but I've tried it. You know when you've got like beginners and elementary students, and a very common like language acquisition problem is getting this whole like he is go or he goes or I was went, and you know the sort of the be and the sentences with be and sentences with verbs like in the present. And I always thought like this lexical this pattern grammar system can be very useful. Like every student, even very low level students, they all know how to say where are you from, right? And they all know how to say where do you live, most of them, right?
And also, do you speak English? For example,
do you speak English? So even better. Okay, better example. But I wanted one with a question word for this particular example. But all right. So but basically any of these sentences work. These are basically what I would like to call like templates, right?
Yes.
Like they know this sentence. They already know like, where are you from, right? So they can just simply make any question based on that template. And you just tell them, look, there are two types of, there's where are you from questions and there's where do you live questions, right? And then you have to decide which one it is. And then you can make any question, because where are you from can become like, why are you here? When were you a teacher? And you just tell them they can replace the type of words, but the structure remains exactly the same. So this sort of templating, really useful for learning, and that's lexical. That's lexical, right? That you would call that.
Yeah, well, sometimes it kind of blends for me as well, because I don't think it's wrong to sometimes like explain what the word order and what's the subject. But the thing is, like, I guess lexical approach is about trying to avoid using these terms, right? I suppose trying to go into too much detail.
Yeah, and they're probably more, I mean, I always think that this sort of assimilation before analysis is always good. Like get the students to learn it and understand how to use it first without giving them any terminology, and then it's fun to pick it apart and have a look at it.
And would you say that learning from context, which is basically any course book is designed in this way these days, right? So would you say it's even bigger when it comes to the lexical approach, that it's even more important than?
Absolutely. Context is absolutely everything. And even like text, like the context of text, like what was said like 5, 6, 7 sentences ago is still going to affect what language you use now, for example. I think context is vital to teach language. If you're teaching students how to say things without any context, if you're just teaching them the words and the forms, then that's not great.
I'm just wondering, like, specifically when it comes to this lexical approach, if it's even more important than, let's say, if you don't use the lexical approach, if you just explain grammar and all that.
Well, if your aim is to demonstrate the form of the present continuous, you don't need any context at all. But that's not
technically, you should still first clarify meaning, right? So
I suppose,
yeah, but I'm just wondering, like, if it's sort of even more important, because they would always tell you, all the tutors and the teacher trainings, they would always tell you have to teach the language, like vocabulary, grammar, from context. Yeah, so we always try to do it as teachers, but is it even more important when you teach lexically? Because because the focus is not so much on the form, but it's on the meaning. So I think it is, right?
Yes. I think that's why I like lexical teaching so much, because language is all about context. The form is incidental to the context, if you know what I mean. It just happens to be there. Yeah. And people get very, very obsessed with grammar and tenses, and I love grammar. I love tenses, but it shouldn't be the first thing you're thinking about. Context and meaning, it should start there, and then it comes from the grammar. That's my opinion.
Absolutely. That's why there are so many successful learners that just learn from watching movies or listening to podcasts. That's how they started. And they don't know anything about grammar.
And they never had an English teacher.
And then people who have been learning English for so long, have attended so many courses and have had so many teachers. They are like, they feel almost treated unfairly or something, hard done by, because when they look at those, they feel jealous and they don't understand what they have been doing wrong.
I see it all the time. Like, some of the best English teachers are the ones who never took lessons. And you know what? We're making a case against our own existence as English teachers. So we should be very
I do that all the time.
all
the time. No, you know what? I think it is possible to learn English on your own, but I think there comes a time where you can't replace a teacher, and that's when you give feedback. Like, for me, this is the number one thing. Okay, another thing could be structure. You give your students structure, accountability. That's a lot of people need that. Let's be honest.
Like, everyone basically.
Everyone tends to be lazy, and you just need someone.
We all are.
You will sort of be there, and you have to perform, or you have to do your best. And if it's the teacher, then it's that kind of authority, even though it might not sound like the word that people use these days, because it's about learner autonomy, but I still think it has its place. And then for me, it's the feedback, because you need the feedback. Like, if you talk to people,
alone isn't enough. That's why this backpacker student example that we came out with, that guy is not doing we're creating a straw man here, obviously, but like, that guy's not doing his job because you need feedback. Speaking alone isn't enough. You need to recognize your mistakes. You need to move forward from your mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. And you notice, as an experienced teacher, you notice the fossilized errors. You also, because I have worked with students of different nationalities, I tend to notice certain patterns. Like, Spanish speakers have problems with this, and then Italian speakers with that, and then I don't know, Polish learners struggle with this, and then it all starts making sense, and you can really fix those students' problems, because you can address it, you can explain it. And it's
and there's nothing wrong with getting a bit meta on the students. I like to do that, and I've had a lot of experience in the last few years with Japanese and Italian students. For some reason, I've had a lot of Japanese students from Japan and students from Italy, and they both actually, languages are completely unrelated and the cultures are quite different from each other, but they both have a similar thing going on, where they over nominalize sentences. Would be like, he has the most knowledge of this subject in the office, rather than he knows more about this. You know, opting for nouns over verbs a lot of the time. So yeah, being aware of things like that and letting your students know that, hey, you're from Japan, you're probably going to try and nominalize things a lot. Try it differently, try to put things into actions and adjectives, make it more subjective. And having these sorts of insights about the differences between the languages, that can be really useful. That's what you're getting at, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, it helps if you know that language as well. So that's why I think every single English teacher should learn at least one other foreign language.
Yes, I remember you saying, oh no, this wasn't you. This was Procrastination Podcast. Claire?
Oh yeah, I've heard that one.
Yeah. She feels strongly about that. I agree with her on that one. Yeah.
That's why I like, I think her name is Emma.
Emma, yeah. Not Claire.
And I'm a massive fan of Emma's because of all her views on English language teaching. And I really have similar,
yes.
and
views. Yes. And yeah. I think all three of us agree that, even if you're bad at learning your language, you have to try, you have to understand the struggle, because then your empathy with the students increase so much. And yeah, I totally agree.
Exactly.
Before we finish, I want you to, do you recommend any books for teachers out there who want to read something that will inform their teaching? One or two books that have really, you've just done the Delta, so you're probably sick of books now. But
exactly, I'm still doing it. I'm still doing Delta module 3.
Anything that you've read any time in your career and gone, oh my God, this is great.
You see, I'm not so big on reading myself. It's okay. I've read some books. So Harmer, Scrivener, I can name a few.
Right.
I can name a few people. Scott Thornbury, of course. I suppose I have to say Scott Thornbury. Yeah. So
which would you go for? Teaching Unplugged.
Teaching Unplugged. It's about the Dogme method, but
that's him and Luke Meddings. It's two people, but yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that he gets his credit there, because
everyone, but anything written by him is good, because it's written
writer.
in a simple way, in a way that you will understand it if you're a novice teacher. And but to be honest,
he always has an interesting angle. It's a very different angle than you usually read about, whether he's talking about teaching or language. It's like a way of looking at it you never thought about it before. That's what I love about reading Scott Thornbury's work. Yeah.
And if you are not into reading so much like me, then there are podcasts out there for English teachers as well. Yeah.
Okay. So let's recommend one of them instead.
For example, Gavin M.
How do you spell that? I don't know this one. Gavin M.
Yeah.
Gav
Gavin M are the hosts. Sorry, it's called How to English.
Yes, I have heard this.
How to English. Then there is one podcast called Everything EFL. That's Erin. I think her name is Erin. Everything EFL. I'm just checking it here, just to be sure I'm saying the right thing. Everything EFL podcast, I think it is. And there are others as well, like you mentioned, procrastination podcast. It's kind of more freestyle, but you still can get a lot of interesting knowledge from Emma, of course.
These are great. There are two that I'm particularly fond of. I'm going to throw my hat in for these as well. The TEFLology podcast, which is a good one. Especially for those who are more interested in a more sort of academic angle on things, and the TEFL Training Institute. I'm going to get this wrong now. I got to check this. I got to get this right. TEFL Training Institute, I think, is the name of the podcast. And am I right? I am correct. Yes, the TEFL Training Institute podcast. They're really good. They're very short. Those ones. Cool.
And then there's the TEFL Commute as well. I like this one a lot as well. The TEFL Commute. The TEFL Commute.
I'm writing that down.
That's I like the the lighthearted approach as well.
Okay. Oh, great.
When it gets a bit too academic, it's not my cup of tea. For example, I think that I've listened to some episodes of the Teflology podcast, but I think that one is a bit too geeky for my liking.
Yeah.
But
I like it, but
that,
I like getting.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, you can choose your podcast, the one that suits you the best, and it could be any of these we've just mentioned. So
these are great recommends, and I'm looking forward to checking the ones I haven't seen or listened to, rather. Yeah. Great. Okay. And on that note, is there any comment or joke or thoughts or complaints or abuse or announcements or anything you'd like to say before we call it a day?
Don't ask me to tell you a joke.
You don't know any jokes? You're not a joke guy?
I do, but this is the worst. Like, if you ask me, Zdenek, tell us a joke.
All your jokes disappear.
I prefer the situational humor. Like, I prefer to just throw in humor as we go along. Without having to be put on the spot.
Classic dogme teacher who just prefers spontaneous humor rather than a structured joke.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I could just go for the usual cliche, but I think it's we can't stress it enough. Whether you are a learner or a teacher, well, this is for teachers mostly, right? You have to enjoy yourself. If you don't enjoy yourself, you're heading for a burnout. Trust me. So find ways to make things more enjoyable for yourself, like I do. Like, now I teach English through football, so I watch football matches. I make notes about the language I hear. I do a little bit of research. I make notes about the language I hear. Then my marketing is that I go to Canva and then make posts about those phrases that I've heard in the football matches. So I'm having fun because I watch the matches, and just find a way that works for you, but don't always do everything by the book. Just, find ways to enjoy yourself. I
like that your advice is a cliche, because I think cliches tend to they're there for a reason, and they're there because they tend to be true, and they tend to be true a lot of the times in a lot of different situations, and that's what's more valuable than that. I appreciate that something that's often said and is a go-to piece of advice. That's good advice.
Yeah, you see, us English teachers, we tend to be very creative, but some of us kind of suppress that creativity because we have a 9-to-5 job, and then we end up in a sort of, it's like a trap, right? Isn't it? Because then you might burn out, and then you stop teaching, and it's a shame, because I bet you have excellent qualities as a teacher, and it's a shame that you leave the profession just because you don't know. There are things like, you can have your own podcast, like me and Gabriel, and
and you could just do weird and experimental fun things on YouTube.
Exactly.
That's what I use YouTube for. And I think an extension of that advice, I'd also just say, like, just don't take it too seriously. Nothing should be taken all that seriously. It's fine. Everything's fine. There's bigger things to worry about.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, on that note, that's a really wonderful place to finish. Is there anything else you want to add?
Can't think of anything off the top of my head. So
I'll say it one more time. Zdenek's English podcast, and Teacher Zdenek on Instagram, YouTube. Check it out, especially if you like football. But even if you don't, I like it. I don't like football. I still check it out.
Thanks.
No, it's great stuff. Great stuff. In that case, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much, Zdenek. It was really it was a great pleasure to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Gabriel. It was an absolute delight.
Yeah, it was for me too. In that case, have a fantastic rest of Sunday. It's finally stopped snowing here. It was snowing throughout the whole podcast episode. I don't know about where you are. It looks sunny.
Yeah, it's not snowing here, unfortunately. Well, this winter is rather warm. Yeah, we've had a colder one this year, so we've taken all your cold weather. But whatever the weather, I hope you have a good rest of the weekend. And talk soon. Yeah, you too. Take care,
Cool.
Gabriel.
Take care. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.